what I encourage people to remember is we're all leaders. I think of leadership as influence, whether it's in an organization, whatever position you have in an organization, but it's also influence in your household. Whether you're married, have kids, whether you are living with roommates, we have influence in their lives. I think when we're driving down the freeway and we're interacting with other drivers, whether it's in the midst of rush hour or when everything's flowing freely, we have influence in the life of other people. And I think that's leadership.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we inspire and empower our listeners to live their best audacious lives ever. I'm totally thrilled to have you here and grateful that you've taken time out of your day to join us. Now, just like a skilled basketball player constantly watches game tape to improve their performance on the court, in life, we have the opportunity to reflect on our actions and behaviors through self-awareness to become better leaders in our journeys of personal growth. Eric Pfeiffer is an accomplished leadership coach and author with a passion for helping individuals unlock their potential and lead with audacity in all aspects of their lives. In this episode, Eric shares valuable insights on the core skills of self-awareness, honesty, humility, and self-love, showing how these simple yet challenging practices can lead to transformational growth. So now that you're all set, let's turn to our conversation with Eric. Hey, Eric, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, my friend.
Are you kidding me? I'm excited to be here. I love the title of your podcast. Is there a play off your name as well in there?
I'll tell you something. It was a very happy happenstance, if you will. It wasn't at all. I remember vividly. What was interesting. I always remember the very first time I remember hearing the word audacious. I was in a workshop. We were workshopping and we were doing this icebreaker. And they said, name something, describe yourself using the same letter as your first name. So I'm like, oh, and I could not. I thought I said audible or something. And someone said, how about audacious? And I was like, oh, cool. Right. And it's just some, so that's how I first became aware of it.
I love it.
It kind of just stuck with me. And then it's funny how it when I start to kind of look at myself and look at sort of, I was talking earlier before we press record about sort of, when I was talking about setting up this podcast, when I start to look at the things that mattered to me, I can see this spirit of audacious has existed through everything I've done. And so, it was something that was meant to be. I didn't do it. The university divinely put all things together. I just simply recognized it and capitalized, move forward.
That's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. But certainly would love to create an opportunity to give you some space to talk about the work that you do. I know particularly with leaders and really helping them to sort of take charge, think of their lives first, right? Because I think that's the starting point for any leader, take charge of your own life and then being able then to positively impact others. And it's funny, if you I'd imagine if you lined up 10 different people and said, hey, what does leadership mean to you? You're going to get a slightly different version. Sometimes that version is based on their own experiences. But it'll be different nonetheless. And so for me, that's why I talk about positive impact, because I believe that's, one of the core aspects of what leadership is. It's not, others might have different opinions and viewpoints, and that's totally fine, because I think all of them are correct, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, leadership, it's interesting. Leadership is one of those, I agree with you. You ask a lot of people and they'll have a different explanation, a lot of it based on their experience, their context. What I encourage people to remember is we're all leaders. I think of leadership as influence. Whether it's in an organization, whatever position you have in an organization, but it's also influence in your household. Whether you're married, have kids, whether you are living with roommates, we have influence in their lives. I think when we're driving down the freeway and we're interacting with other drivers, whether it's in the midst of rush hour or when everything's flowing freely, we have influence in the life of other people. And I think that's leadership. And I think it's helpful for everybody to remember that we're all leaders in the areas of our lives where we have influence and impact in the life of other people. And I think to the degree that we take that seriously and we own that responsibility, um, I think that's our own personal way of being able to contribute something significant to culture, society, to life. And so, yeah, so that's the way I like to think of leadership. We're all leaders.
Do you remember when you first came to that realization? I remember mine. I'll share mine, but I'm curious what yours was, if you remember.
Yeah, mine came through a mentor in my late 20s, early 30s, when my mentor helped me wake up to the fact that whether I realized it or not, I was having significant influence in the lives of people around me. At that point, I was married, had two little kids. We had moved across the country to the East Coast, and working in a business. And my mentor was helping me to see that. He said, Eric, you have influence. The question is whether other people value your influence, whether
Mm.
your influence is as an asset or a liability in any environment. And that woke me up to this idea of like, oh my gosh, like, because at that point, like many people, I thought of leadership as a title, a position. When I achieve this particular role within a company and I have a team to manage, and, then I'm a leader. But I'm so grateful for this mentor, for him helping me to recognize that I had an opportunity. I mean, if I had seen it from my earliest years,
Yeah.
I was having an opportunity to grow and develop as a leader, but didn't recognize that opportunity. I think so many people wait until they're in a position, have a title,
Yeah.
to really take seriously how they lead, how they influence and impact their environment.
And fail to recognize that the steps that they took to get to that position or title is what counts more than anything else. Not the fact that you got the parking spot that says manager, supervisor,
Right.
CEO, whatever. I vividly remember when we were, when we were kids. My mom used to send me and my younger brother to summer camp, day camps. We did that, like that was what we some of the things we did in the summertime. And there was one particular camp. We did an excursion in downtown Toronto and the city of Toronto where I live, which, in retrospect, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's an excursion in your own city, but okay, fine, whatever. So we did this outing, if you will, and we had different age groups within our that
Yeah.
were went. And for whatever reason, this one little boy, he gravitated to me, and he always wanted to hold my hand, and we walked around. And I remember one of the camp counselors saying to me, "You're going to make a really good leader one day." And had no concept of what that individual was talking about. In my mind, I'm looking after some kid, like that's all it was. But
Yeah.
but they were able to identify that, man, and it's always stuck with me. I was like I don't know, 13, 14, 15. I don't know how I was exactly, but I was still quite young and didn't understand, have a concept of what leadership was per se. But
Right.
I was able to make that connection. And so years later, I went back and I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about.
Yes.
I get it now. Right. And so to your point, I think there's a piece around self-awareness that's significantly important in the leadership space.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, that's our starting point when we're talking about leadership.
Mhm.
We say that our ability to lead other people begins with our ability to lead ourselves. And to lead ourselves, we have to see ourselves. And self-awareness sounds great. It sounds kind of sexy when people talk about it, but to actually practice self-awareness means, we got to take a hard look at both what I call both the gold, the incredible value and positive qualities that we bring, but we also have to take a hard look at the dirt that we're still working through in our lives. And that can often be really difficult because sometimes we're going to see
Sure.
things in ourselves that, feel a little embarrassing or shameful, or make us feel a little bit discouraged, but that's part of the journey. And I tell people all the time, I said, self-awareness is really, really hard, but it's worth it, because on the other side of self-awareness is the opportunity to become a better leader.
Got you. So then let's kind of get into the nitty gritty, if you will, and talk about what the process of self awareness looks like.
Yeah. Well, I did write a book that's
Right
unpacking
on cue.
the core skills of self-awareness. It's called Leadership Gravitas, which the subtitle is 12 Essential Skills to Expand Your Impact and Influence. And this is really this is the content we use with high-level executive leaders all the way down to, young teenagers. I have lots of friends who are requiring their kids to read this book. because it introduces the concept of personal responsibility, that as we go through life, rarely does life unfold the way we expect or want. And oftentimes we find ourselves, whether it's in the household we're growing up in, we're working on a team or for a particular boss, nowadays in the political landscape, social landscape, economic landscape, I think we're constantly bombarded by a life that feels like happening to us. And the goal in terms of being able to practice personal responsibility is recognizing that we get to flip the script. Life is not happening to us. Life is happening for us. If we can see that we don't need to be in control of all of life circumstances, because the one thing that we can be in control of, and is the most important thing to be in control of, actually is what makes the difference in how we experience life, which is we are always in control of our attitudes and behaviors.
Yes.
And so personal responsibility is about recognizing that. And then personal responsibility allows us to step into self-awareness to say, rather than blaming the world around me or my spouse or my kids or my boss or whatever, the economy, I have an opportunity to take responsibility by taking a hard look at myself. And so we unpack these 3 skills of self-awareness. We talk about honesty, about developing a really accurate and sober view of our attitude and behaviors, but also how we're impacting our environment. Now, the trick in that is that being honest with ourselves cannot happen in a vacuum. Because I know that if somebody asked me years ago, are you honest with yourself about yourself? I'd say, of course I am. But then if you asked the people around me to share with me, how does Eric impact your environment? I would have found it very difficult to accept the less positive impact that I was having on the life of people around me. And so part of honesty is inviting people to give us feedback. And so we talk a lot about how, professional athletes, you've worked in the basketball space, and I work in the NBA space as well. When you're working with high-level athletes, they are constantly watching game tape. The best players, the ones that are really committed to growth, watch game tape. Why? Because game tape provides them an objective outside perspective on how they were performing in any given moment, right? Which is very difficult when you're in the heat of the moment in a basketball game, just like in life. And we think we handled a conversation. We think we used a particular tone of voice. We think our body language communicated one thing. And then if we could step back and see ourselves on video, which is the way we talk about self-awareness to leaders, we say, could you imagine if I was recording that conversation that you had with this difficult employee or this client or the customer or your whoever, and we could replay it? And you had that kind of that's why we need to develop the mechanisms in our life for developing honest feedback, objective feedback, so that we can really get a better view of ourselves. And then we talk about humility as the second skill, which is, humility is a tough one. And I get into it in the book. I won't go too far, but basically helping people understand humility is not about thinking less of yourself and diminishing yourself. Humility is about embracing what you discover through honesty, the good and the bad, the gold and the dirt, and actually accepting this is who I am today. Because we spend so much of our life trying to be somebody we're not yet.
That's right.
Or living in a past version of ourselves.
That's right.
Because of, somehow we messed up or regrets or areas of shame. But
or even when we talk about the past, even we hold on to our past successes too. So it's not just the shame. And I think it's an important one because, and it's not. And I always say I'm big on celebrating our wins and celebrating the good stuff, but it doesn't stop there. Right? It doesn't stop like, okay, yeah, I did like so. Yeah, in grade 5, I won my basketball championship. That's not what I'm carrying into my adult world. Well, look what I did like 10 years ago. It doesn't, you move on, right? Because life is an evolutionary process. It continues.
That's right. That's right. So we talk about the practice, because we talk about these are skills. We talk about the practice of humility being like the phrase, learning how to play your cards and let the chips fall where they may.
Love it.
It's showing up to any meeting, any conversation, any situation, any opportunity with a freedom to say, I'm going to give it what I got. And I'm going to accept that sometimes I'm going to have a winning hand and sometimes I'm not. And that's life, but I'm going to get to learn from that. And so do you want to say something about that?
Oh, no, well, because that one gets me excited all the time because of the fact we look at mishaps, failures, unplanned events as bad things.
Yes.
And perhaps on the surface level, we can certainly say that, yes, they are bad. But the lesson you just said, what was the lesson I learned from that? How did I evolve? What did I take from that?
That's
What
right.
can I use to get better? And I think that's really important. Like,
That's right.
so even in those periods of those unfortunate situations, you can learn from it. Like,
That's right.
I've gone through a divorce. I learned a lot about myself going through that process,
That's
right?
right.
There was nothing good about it, but I learned about myself and I'm
Yeah.
better for it. So
Yes.
absolutely.
I love that. Well, and then that springboards into the third core skill of self-awareness, which is self-love,
Mhm.
which is probably the most difficult skill for most of the leaders I work with to engage, because the way we define self-love, if honesty is seeing yourself clearly and humility is
Yep.
about embracing, accepting who you are today. Self-love is about giving yourself permission to become a better version of yourself. Self-love is not just about pampering yourself and making sure you take a hot bath and read a good book and go on a good vacation. Those are important, right?
Sure.
I call those self-care, not
Mm,
self-love. Self-love is about loving ourselves and believing and giving ourselves permission and investing in a better version of us, so that it's the bridge that takes us from who we are today to we are becoming tomorrow. But interestingly enough, that is usually the most difficult skill for most leaders, because people are very often caught up in the regret, shame, frustration, disappointment from past events.
yes.
I dropped the ball here. I messed up. I stumbled, fumbled. And so what I have to remind adult leaders all the time, as I say, is when you see a toddler, a little baby learning to walk,
That's it.
I said, you tell me, do they not stumble and fumble and bumble their way into, do they not fall more often than they succeed in the beginning? Imagine if parents responded to that child every time it fell by saying,
Yes.
you're never going to get it. This isn't working. You're not good enough at this. You're never going to figure this out. But no, the way that humans grow in any area of life, period, even into our adult years, is we stumble, fumble, bumble our way into it. So we do it, and we do it poorly at first, but we keep doing it until we get better. And it's so difficult the older we get to give ourselves permission to grow, because we don't want to suck at something. We don't want to fail.
Yes.
We don't want to,
Yes.
be embarrassed. We don't want people to think we can't do it. And which is why, by the way, when I'm called by leaders, organizations to step in and potentially work with them, it's because they're finally reaching a point where they're feeling the gap between who they are today and where they think they should be. And the embarrassment, the shame, the sense of like, why can't I figure this out? Why can't I lead this team better? Why can't I help this company get to a better place? And I have to remind them, first of all, we didn't get a lot of leadership training through our lives. Like we learned about everything else in school but leadership.
That's right.
And secondly, welcome to the party. The only way you're going to bridge that gap is by stumbling and fumbling and bumbling your way there. And I'm happy to help you with that. But I tell leaders, if you can't own that reality, then what's going to happen is you're going to be so risk averse,
Yes.
growth averse,
You got it.
because you're afraid of what's going to happen when you mess up. Just get over it. You're going to mess up. You're going to do it poorly at first
Got it.
until you get better.
We all were a beginner at something at some point in our lives. And when we were a beginner, we absolutely sucked at it. I don't care who you are,
That's the
what
truth.
it was, you just flat out sucked at it, but you continued to go to push and try and
Yeah.
make the attempts. You
Yeah.
think as I say attempts, and and you can relate to this with respects to the professional sports of a basketball player. Every time he stepped to the free throw line and talked about all the shots that he missed before he shoots that free throw,
Yeah.
it's not going to bode well for him.
That's right.
It's funny, in even staying with basketball. I mean, even baseball is probably a better analogy, but the if you shoot as a basketball player, if your shooting percentage is 45%, you're an exceptional shooter in the
That's
game
right.
of basketball, right?
That's right.
In baseball, if your batting average is 300, right? you are really, really you're at your top level, right? So it's all about, your
Which means you're failing more than you're succeeding.
that's exactly it. That's exact significant. You're more than doubling
Yeah,
your failure, right? More than your success. And you would be considered one of the best,
that's right.
literally, right? And so it's just really a mindset approach is how I see it.
It's so good. I love that.
It's funny though. It's funny. Failing more than we're succeeding, and you're still great.
That's right. That's right. But it's amazing because the people who can accept and embrace that failure is a part of the journey. I mean,
Yeah.
like if I'm honest, the only real failure is failing to learn from your failures. Like I think the word failure should be taken out of our vocabulary because it's a misnomer. We think of failure as I screwed up. There's never a chance now that I can do it right. That's wrong in every area of life. No matter what our biggest quote unquote failures are, there's always an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to do it better next time. And it doesn't mean that there aren't natural consequences in life. We
Sure,
experience that,
sure,
but that's also part of life. Like you fall
sure.
when you're riding a bike and you skin your knee, consequence. But you got to get back up on that bike and
That's
keep
right.
figuring it out until you feel really comfortable.
I think what helps with failure, the resilient piece to be able to get back is being clear on why you're doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
So if you're working towards something and you need to get this thing done and it didn't work out the first time, what helps you is okay, but there's this thing I'm working towards. I gotta get this. So there's a
that's right.
bigger,
That's right.
bigger end goal.
That's right.
Um, while we may not be able to apply it to everything, right? That's certainly a good motivator, if you will, I'd say.
Yeah, here's a great quote. I think it's by a guy named G.K. Chesterton.
Okay.
Uh, and he says, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. I added, until you get better,
Yes.
right? We're not going to accept that you just do something poorly for the rest of your life. But the first part of that phrase, anything worth doing.
Doing.
And so even with leaders that I work with in any field, doesn't matter if it's professional sports or, I don't work primarily with athletes. I work with front office, owners.
Sure.
And I tell them we have to identify what's worth doing. That's the why you're talking about, or Simon Sinek says, start with your
Yes.
why. Like
Yes.
we have to identify what's the value of what it is, because if you don't value what it is that you're going to try and learn, then when difficulties come, you will abandon it,
That's right.
right? You will find something different to do. But if we do see the value in becoming better leaders, if we do find value in impacting and influencing our teams, our organization, our environment, our families, our households more effectively, we want to be more of an asset. If we really do value that, then we'll have the courage and the tenacity and the resilience and the audacity. Because I think, to cover that gap of who we are today and who we want to be tomorrow requires a bit of audacity, a sense of like, you know what? Maybe nobody else believes I can get better at this. Maybe I'm struggling to believe I can get better at this, but I'm going to muster up some audacity and say, you know what? Screw this. I can make this happen. I can figure this out. I can get better.
That's right. That's right. The idea, for me, what it's really exciting is the idea of taking that first step and having no idea what steps 2, 3, and 4 look like, but
That's
doing
right.
it anyways. That to me is, I think there's a Martin Luther Jr. King quote around that where he talks about the courage to take that first step in darkness. You don't know where it's going, right?
Yeah.
You just go with it, right? And so that part's also really exciting. I want to just go back. You talk about honesty, humility, and self-love. All three of those things, I'm sure, when you first identify those, people are familiar with them. They know what they are, right? They get it. But still, some like, difficulty in still being able to execute them, right? Like, and it's funny because you'd say, but these are really easy things, right? But it's still hard.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I tell people, it's too often we have that we kind of, when we talk about difficult things in life, we talk about them as though they're easy but complex.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So only the experts of any field can really figure this stuff out. You have to be an expert leader to be able to do this kind of stuff. And I say, no, we have to flip that upside down. These skills are actually really simple, but they're really hard to practice.
Right.
And that's where I think we need to get it right. We need to make sure that we understand practicing self-awareness, honesty, humility, self-love. These are very simple skills. They're not rocket science. Like every one of us, I mean, these are the things we've trained our 2 adult kids in since they were small. The value and the practice of honesty, humility, and self-love. But we also reminded them over and over in the challenges that they experienced in trying to practice those skills. These are difficult. Hey, your mom and dad at 40 something years old, we still struggle in our own ways to practice these simple skills.
Yes.
And we're only going to continue to get better and get better as we practice them. But I think that's really helpful, because I think too often we've made leadership very complex, and so that you have to have a PhD to understand what really great leadership is. And thankfully, and it's not just myself, there are a lot of people out there that are really simplifying it, and not reducing it to something that just should be easy for people, because it's not. It's really hard, but it is simple.
Gotcha.
Right? These are things that we can all practice on a daily, moment by moment basis.
Absolutely.
That really will transform not only ourselves, but really does have the potential of transforming our culture, our teams, our other people around us.
I'm super curious, Eric, what got you into the coaching space?
That's a great question. Well, I, as very many people, was in my 20s working and trying to figure out my career path and what I was good at. And I was a high-level athlete through college. I played soccer through college. That was supposed to be my career path. I was supposed to go over to Europe and try to pick up on a team over there and make that a career. And I burned out right after college. I was set to go and try out with some teams. And I ran right into a brick wall, mentally, emotionally, physically, I literally, the way that I would say it now is I felt bankrupt. And there was a lot of extracurricular challenges going on in my life. My parents had just gone through a brutal divorce.
Right.
My siblings, there's 5 of us kids, and we were all just kind of reeling, disorientated from all this, because they got divorced right during that time, right before I was finishing college up. And that's also the age, I think, where what I call the second puberty, those early to mid 20s, especially for guys, where we're starting to ask, whether we realize it or not, we are internally starting to ask these bigger questions of, who am I outside of my household? Who am I outside of my parents? What do I believe? What do I think? What's important to me? What do I value? What do I think is worth fighting for? And you're asking these big questions, and so that's where I was. And I'm in the workforce now, and I'm trying to figure that out. And I remember just feeling like I do not know. I don't know up from down, north from south, right from wrong in some ways. And it actually began with my older brother, who began to mentor me. I moved to San Diego years ago, and for a short while then, and he took me under his wing, and we just started meeting and talking. And it was kind of the first time where somebody was asking me just great questions about what I thought, what I believed, and giving me space to wrestle and to not feel like I had to have it all figured out.
Right.
And that part of the journey was trying and experimenting with different ideologies and different philosophies and different perspectives. And then shortly after that, a number of years after that, I met another gentleman, a British man, who had come over to the States, and he was wanting to build a coaching business. Now, I wasn't interested in the coaching business. What I was interested in is when I was first exposed to his views on leadership and training, he had this holistic, like, it wasn't about corporate America, though it all works in corporate America. It was about this integrated, holistic approach to who you are as a human being, your identity, your sense of self-worth, how you operated in every moment of your life, not just when you go to work and put on the leadership hat per se. And that was so attractive to me, because what I was desperately looking for is, how do I become the version of me that I want to become? And so I ended up befriending this gentleman, and he took me under his wing, and I spent the next 13 years basically with him. And my main goal was, I want to develop the skills, the tools, the ability so that I can continuously, not just for like this next 6 months or year,
Right.
I wanted to learn the tools and skills so that I could continue to become the version of me that I wanted to become, that I believed was available. And this gentleman was providing that. And
Right.
so it just happened that he was building this coaching business. So I went to work with him, and the coaching business was kind of the side gig. Like, hey, I'll work with you and I'll help you build your business, because the deal was, if you come help me build this coaching business, I will train you and equip you with all of these things,
Right.
and you'll get what you want and you help me build the business. Well, what I didn't realize is how much those two are connected. And so I fell in love with the journey I was on, but I also fell in love with now being able to partner with other leaders and equip them with tools and
Yes.
skill that would help
Yeah.
them feel like they were now in charge of their own growth and trajectory. And so that's how I fell in love with coaching. And then that business shut down, I don't know, almost 10 years ago. And because, as we all know, we put leaders up on a pedestal, and eventually, we're going to find out something. He ended up running the business into the ground. It was very unfortunate, because it was a
Right.
very successful coaching business.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
at that point, I realized I love coaching. I was in my early 40s at that point. I
Mhm.
thought, I don't know if I have what it takes, but I want to try this out. And so
Right.
I started my own coaching business,
Yeah.
and took, what I learned from this person, this mentor, and all the other mentors and all the other smart people, because everyone, there's just so many amazing people in the world. I took the best of all I had learned from all of these different people, and I started developing what I call a leadership operating system.
Yeah.
And so that became the kind of core foundation of my coaching business, which is essentially training leaders and teams and organizations in the simple tools and skills that actually empower them. Like, our goal is to empower them so they don't need us anymore. That's why
Mm.
it's called Empower Coaching. We want to empower them with the tools and skills so that they can take charge of their leadership journey. They
Gotcha.
can continuously become the person that they want to become. And so that they have the confidence and clarity to transform the culture of any part of their life, their
Gotcha.
household, their teams, their
Yes.
organization. And so I've been doing that now for, gosh, almost 10 years.
Well, I mean, there's so many examples of audaciousness in your story in itself. So, I mean, you're a prime candidate for this podcast. There's no question about that, and I'm glad to have you be able to share that. I think as well too, when you sort of look at how our past experiences influence our work. It's the fingerprints are all over your story in
Yes,
terms of all these things that happen, and how you end up where you are now. And it also leads, I think it all fits and points the direction of your book, Transform Your Trajectory, where you
that's
talked
right.
about that transformation and that growth process and learning through those experiences to
That's
get
right.
yourself to the other level. I wonder if you could sort of, I was going to say, I was going to say, talk about your book, but I kind of feel like you have been talking about it this entire time.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, right? So I talk about this leadership operating system, which is
Yes.
comprised of 8 core tools.
Yes.
They're visual tools. And so the first book, Leadership Gravitas, introduces the kind of DNA, the core foundational tool. It's a framework for emotional intelligence. Like,
Hmm.
how do we become a better version of ourselves every day?
Right.
Transform Your Trajectory introduces the second tool in the toolkit, which is basically giving people a very simple process of identifying the life experiences that are chock full of learning opportunities, right? Because
Mhm.
we nowadays, people think they have to read a book or listen to a podcast or go to a conference or go
Yes.
do advanced education or continuing
Right.
education to actually learn. And I say, no, 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 no. We need to learn how to learn again in our culture.
Right. Right.
And what I discovered was, most people, if you ask them, how do you learn? They say, I read a book, I listen. Okay, no, you're not. That's getting good ideas. That's getting
Mm.
knowledge. But how
Mm.
do you learn and grow and experience personal transformation? Oh, I don't know. Go to a therapist. That's really the response.
Right.
Or maybe I'll hire a coach to give me some answers, or a consultant. Okay, no, no, no. How do you personally take responsibility, and how do you develop your ability to mine out, to excavate, to
Mm.
extract the learning, the insights, the wisdom that's available, like literally in 100 of experiences that we have every single day,
Yes.
and actually leverage those experiences to transform our trajectory, our team's trajectory, our marriage's trajectory. I mean, my wife and I use this tool all the time as we're working through challenges in our marriage.
Sure.
Kids know this tool. They're actually always processing stuff with their friends, but using the tool as a framework to ask the right questions, to give them a chance to take the wisdom and then to leverage it for transformation.
So I love it all, Eric. I do. The part of the book, I mean, the book title that I also appreciate is, again, how the subtitle is, how to turn most challenging moments into life changing breakthroughs.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. It really, really is, because we've all experienced those most life challenging moments, right? We've had them. And to know that we can take those and dust them off and,
Yeah.
and shine it up and turn it into something wonderful and spectacular.
That's right. That's right.
It's a beautiful thing.
I mean, I would say that's probably, without knowing it, that is the story for most people. If they look back on their life and you ask them the question, what were the most formidable times of your life? When did you experience the most personal growth and transformation? They will point back to significant seasons of difficulty, challenge, opportunity, risk they had to take, right? Where they failed, fell on their face.
Yes.
And they'll say, man, having to grow through that, having to work through that was so transformative. Great. But most people tend to look back almost passively like, oh, I'm glad that happened. But what if people had the ability to do that for themselves every day?
Yes.
And so what happened was we started with the word trigger, because everybody knows, what it means to get triggered. I got triggered. I was in this conversation. They said something. I felt triggered. I got an email. I got a text early in the morning. I felt triggered. This client dropped off and now I feel triggered. And so the word trigger carried such a kind of a pejorative, negative connotation for people. And so what we did is we substituted the word trigger for the word kairos, which is a Greek word that is the word for time. But in the Greek, they have two words that mean time.
Okay.
One word is chronos, which we know we get chronological from.
Yes.
That's like sequential time.
Yes.
Right? Linear time. But the word kairos is the word for a significant moment in that linear timeline. That significant moment where something's happening. And what the Greeks understood is we need to be able to identify the moments in our lives that are ripe for learning and transformation.
Right.
Ripe for breakthrough. And so we just took that word and substituted it for trigger. And now with all of our clients and all the companies we work for, if you walk through their halls, they'll talk about the kairos moments of their day or their week, or something happened with a client. It's just another kairos, because what the word kairos does is it turns a trigger into from something negative and difficult and to an opportunity. Got it. So now when my clients will call me and they'll be like, hey, I've got a big kairos. Before they would call me and say, I've got this stupid employee. I've got this situation. I'm so pissed off. Now they call me and they say, oh, I have a kairos I want to process. And immediately in their brain, it triggers opportunity.
Yes. And I think that's a wonderful reframing exercise, right, to go through, because when you can reframe the way you view things in your head, the way you attack them or combat them also has changed too.
That's right.
Yeah, you almost, in a perverse kind of weird way, you're almost like looking for problems, because you want to, you try, hey, let's get this problem and let's turn this into something special. Let's process this out and let's get the team together. Like, I mean, that's potentially what it can become, and which is very, very cool. Still, I mean, looking for problems is kind of weird too, but that's another story. but if you get where I'm going with this, I mean, overall, it's a cool thing to do.
And but here's the thing: they don't say I'm looking for problems; they say I'm looking for kairos moments.
Kairos, that's right.
And that immediately it's already reframed it for them in their brain. Is like, oh, this is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to do something different.
I love it. No, it's awesome. That's so awesome. Eric, this is. I mean, I think the work you do is fantastic in terms of what you're allowing leaders to be able to do. The transforming piece is cool because it's change, right? Change is a part of life, and so and oftentimes the acceptance of change is probably the difficult part of the change, right?
Right.
Like,
That's right.
and so if you're reframing in a way that you're saying, yeah, let's transform, let's get better, let's elevate, let's grow, then I mean you're blowing the roof off of things right there, Eric, and sky's the limit.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Um, let's give our listeners if they're opportunity if they want an opportunity to pick up either of your two books, where can we send them?
Yeah, it's books, whether they're both in audible form now, on all the
Okay.
traditional platforms, they can
Okay.
find the books in print or digital or audible. But really, I tell people if they want to find anything about us, they can just go to our website, which is mpwrcoaching.com. And I tell people we offer a free 1 hour coaching session. And people are always surprised when I'm the one that gets on the call. I'm like, why are you surprised? That's just what I love doing. So I tell people you can go on there, you can book a free call. And I tell people, they say, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk to you about. It doesn't matter. I'll
Right.
ask you the right questions. Don't worry about it. Like,
Right.
just if you have any inclination, any desire to grow, to learn, to develop as a leader, whether maybe somebody's on the right track and they just need to be encouraged to stay on the track they're on. Maybe they're not sure what track they need to be on, whatever the case is, whatever level of leader they are. I tell people if you just want to have a conversation, that's what we're there for. We'd love to chat and serve those people and help them get connected to whatever is going to help them most. We're never there to sell a coaching package and all that stuff.
Right.
That's not who
Right.
I am.
Right.
But we're there to serve people. We really want to help leaders. My mission, I tell people, my mission in life is ultimately to put these tools into the hands of as many human beings as possible. Whether it's in my lifetime or beyond that, that's the goal, because I really believe that to transform the world at any level, even in the most microscopic parts of the world, to transform the world means we have to be able to transform people. And to transform people, it means those people have to own the responsibility of their own transformation. And that's what we're after. Like, I believe all the change we're looking for in the political atmosphere and the economic realities, social issues and dynamics within the family dynamic, all of it, all the problems we see in the world, we're waiting for them. We're hoping they're going to go away, or we're waiting for somebody else to fix them. And I say, don't wait. Be the solution, transform yourself, and contribute to that change.
Love it. It's awesome. Eric, this is first of all, thank you for being here. This is great.
This has been a blast, Audley. I love it. I could talk to you for 3 or 4 more hours.
Oh man, please write another book, will you? Please, so we can bring you back.
I'm in the midst of the next one right now.
Well, you got me on, keep me on speed dial. I love to come talk to you about that too. But this has been great, honestly, and I love the approach, and I think the part about your approach I really appreciate a lot is the simplicity of it. You know, we're not talking about sort of complex, nuanced sort of strategies that
Right.
you involve flow charts and process maps and all that kind of stuff. It's things that people can not only understand and grasp, but almost put into practice almost immediately.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing about this. And then you know, and we can break it down even further. And because I know we're talking a lot about what we our professional lives, but you know, a lot of these things we can take in our personal lives also.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
impact it can have on our family, our relationships, and beyond. And so, thank you for that.
Let me just say this, Audley, my favorite thing I ever get to hear is when I am sharing a meal with clients and their spouses, and the spouse says, the work that my spouse has been doing with your coaching business is transformed the way they show up when they come home now. Like, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I have stories of marriages that have been saved, parents who have rediscovered a fresh excitement for parenting young people or teenagers. I mean, across every area of their life, Oddly, because once they realize that they're in charge of their own life and they feel equipped, oh my gosh, it's like it is a newfound freedom to say, I can do this, and not to cower away from those challenges or to cope through those challenges, but to really say, you know what, I'm going to step in and I'm going to be an asset in this environment.
And I'm so glad you raised that, because what I'm hearing clearly is the tools. One of the things that allows you to do is to be present. And when you look at challenges in relationships, oftentimes it's people aren't fully there; they're not fully present, and so the work that you're doing is forcing people to take it head on, right? What's the Kyra like? What is it? Let's be present. Let's figure it out. Let's move forward, right? And so.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that loud and clear. This is awesome, man. This is great stuff, Eric. I'm really, really happy we've had this chat. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on all the great work. And yeah, again, write that third book, will you, please?
I'm doing it. I'm working on it.
Right. Back we are here on the podcast. The key takeaway from Eric's conversation that I had is that embracing failure as a stepping stone for learning and growth is essential in becoming a resilient and effective leader. By practicing self-awareness and cultivating a mindset of continual improvement, we can navigate life's challenges with audacity and grace. To learn more or even connect directly with Eric, be sure to check out the show notes for contact details and additional resources. Explore special offers and products by Eric to further elevate your own leadership journey and personal development. Now, as we wrap up this episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, I encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, or share our content if you haven't already done so, because these are things that help this podcast grow and reach even more individuals looking to lead audacious lives. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, audacity is the key to unlocking your full potential. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another.